watching the news at 6, where we get you the day's top developing stories. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and here are the headlines. Madras High Court seeks a report on the missing MLAs in Tamil Nadu. Caretaker Chief Minister Pannirselvam's faction alleges that some MLAs are being kept in forced captivity, but Sasikala loyalists dismiss the allegation. The three-day National Women's Parliament on Empowering Women and Strengthening Democracies has begun. Union Minister Venkaiah Naidu asks parties to back legislation on 33% reservation for women in Parliament and state legislatures. Setback for Donald Trump's travel ban order. US Appeals Court refuses to block the lower court ruling, says government has not proved any terror threat to justify the ban. And records stumble as India pile up 687 for the loss of 6 wickets against Bangladesh. Virat Kohli surpasses Don Bradman to become the first batsman in Test cricket to score double centuries in 4 Test series in a row. But first, politics and rival camps made competing claims in Tamil Nadu on Friday, even as the Madras High Court expressed concerns over reports that AIADMK MLAs were being held hostage by Party General Secretary V.K. Sasikala and her aides. Reports say that Governor Vidyasagar Rao has sought reports from the police on the matter, while many MLAs from the Sasikala camp asserted that they are not staying against their consent. Chief Minister Pannirselvam's faction claimed the police refused to mark their complaint.
The AIADMK faction, led by V.S. Sasikala on Friday, suspended E. Madhusudanan from the primary membership of the party. A prominent party leader, Madhusudanan, had on Thursday announced his decision to back Pannirselvam as the Chief Minister.
Wait and see. I will, evening I will talk to the general.
In another latest twist to the political saga, the Pannirselvam-led government hit back. It told the Madras High Court it was incorrect to say that AIADMK MLAs who were reportedly supporting Party General Secretary V.K. Sasikala for the Chief Minister's post were not illegally confined. In response, the court took note of the allegations that at least 20 MLAs were refusing to take food and water because they were being held in confinement.
Pannirselvam didn't give any list of MPs, MLAs of support. He didn't stake any claim. He only wants his resignation to be withdrawn, but that has already been accepted. And he has functioned as a caretaker thing. How can you, it's like putting toothpaste back into the toothpaste.
With several petitions filed and questions being raised about them, the MLAs met the media outside the resort where they were staying in Chennai. Stating that they were not birds in a cage, they denied being held hostage.
Governor இப்போ உள்ள சூழ்நிலையில கவர்னர் எப்ப வேணாலும் கூப்பிடலாம். இப்போ உள்ள சூழ்நிலையில கவர்னர் எப்ப வேணாலும் கூப்பிடலாம். அவங்க 200 கிலோமீட்டர் 300 கிலோமீட்டருக்கு அங்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. எப்படி ஒண்ணு கூட முடியும்? இப்போ அவங்க எல்லாம் ஒரே ரூம்ல ஒரு காம்பஸ்ல இருக்காங்க. அப்படியே சேர்ந்து வந்து நாங்க எப்ப வேணாலும் கூப்பிடலாம்னு வந்து இருக்காங்க.
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court also refused to give an urgent hearing on a PIL seeking to restrain Sasikala from being sworn in as the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister. It said the hearing will be held in due course after it decides the disproportionate assets case against her within a week. The petition said a law and order situation could develop if Sasikala is indicted after becoming the Chief Minister.
To hear the plea, because Sasikala is not a member of the Legislative Assembly, her appointment as a Chief Minister would be unconstitutional. Not only that, Sasikala convicted in a disproportionate asset case along with Jayalalitha, so against which the Supreme Court has to deliver the judgment. So until the Supreme Court deliver judgment in that case, her appointment would be illegal.
In a major blow to Sasikala, however, the Congress also refused to support the AIADMK General Secretary in her attempt to become the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister. This was after the state BJP said on Thursday that it will support Pannirselvam's continuation as the Chief Minister of the state. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
All right, for more on this developing story, we're joined by Narayan Lakshman, who's the senior deputy editor with The Hindu, joining us, in fact, on the phone line from Chennai. Lakshman, thanks so much for joining us again on the news at 6. You know, anybody who had doubts really of the drama that goes on in Tamil Nadu politics, This is yet another chapter, and day by day it's getting even more interesting.
Absolutely. This has been one of the most unusual episodes in recent times, although, as you correctly said, Tamil Nadu has been accustomed to dramatic shifts and changes at the highest level of politics in the state. What you're seeing now, however, is an intensification of this drama as we head towards the denouement, which is basically a combination of several things. Firstly, there is the disproportionate assets case verdict coming, and we believe it could come quite early next week. That's what we're hearing, the latest from some sources. And on the other hand, of course, you are witnessing the struggle for legitimacy, both within the political system as well as in the minds of the general public, between the two emerging factions of the AIADMK, one led by Sasikala and the other by Mr. Paneerselvam.
That's right. And you know, Lakshman, one very interesting thing which of course we've been talking about is of this disproportionate assets case. We do understand it has been in the court for over a year now. You know, is it right for the governor to be waiting for this verdict? Do you think the governor has perhaps made this even worse as far as, you know, waiting to take that decision? Do you think perhaps if he had acted faster or earlier, then things wouldn't have spiraled out of control in this manner?
That is possibly true. However, we should be careful about reading into the governor's intentions, for we do not know what backroom conversations are happening. For example, it is completely within his constitutional rights, and I would even say obligations,
yes,
to confer with constitutional authorities when any such highly unusual situation presents itself. And he has apparently, from what we hear, been doing so ever since he was apprised of the matter. Now, whether there is a political goal as well and it relates to this case or not, that is a matter of sheer speculation, and I would be careful about reading into that.
Yes.
But certainly, what is probably on all of both his and the central government's mind in Delhi is there should be minimal instability in this state, and the disproportionate assets case is seen as pushing it in the opposite direction.
And constitutional experts, including, of course, the lawyers that we heard in the story as well, saying that, you know, Sasikala is not a member of the Legislative Assembly, hence her appointment as a Chief Minister would anyway be illegal. Is this in any way also making the governor take, you know, longer in making that decision?
That is possible, but I think the governor is probably firstly looking at how many MLAs are backing each side. And as we know, Ms. Sasikala has already presented a list, whereas Mr. Paneerselvam has, from what we are hearing, asked for 5 more days to come up with that number or figure or that statement of support. Now, the question of constitutionality of electing it, I believe, of electing Ms. Sasikala as into the Chief Minister's office, I believe that she would be within the framework of law to seek that election, because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, the election is done on the basis of support within the party, and the party functionaries,
yes,
from what we are hearing, a large enough number of them seem to be supporting. I think the minimum threshold where she would lose that support of the strongest party in the House would be 117, with the minimum needed. If she drops to 116 or less, that would be a problem for her. Now, the broader question we are looking at, and which the whole state is up in arms about in a sense, is the question of legitimacy that we began this discussion with, which is that Ms. Sasikala has to prove her credentials in the realm of governance, in the realm of elections, in the realm of being a genuine candidate of the people. And that is an entirely different matter.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there for now. Narayan Lakshman, thanks so much for joining us on this story developing by the day. We'll come back to you for more updates, you know, as the days progress. Meanwhile, in a first-of-its-kind conclave, the National Women's Parliament, organized by the Andhra Pradesh Legislative Assembly, began on Friday, and the vision of this conclave is to encourage social, political and economic empowerment of women. Speaking at the inaugural session, Union Minister Venkaiah Naidu said that the ruling party would pass the Women's Reservation Bill once it has a majority in Rajya Sabha.
The 3-day National Women's Parliament, organized by the Andhra Pradesh Legislative Assembly, began in Amravati on Friday with the theme Empowering Women and Strengthening Democracy. Addressing the gathering, Union Minister Venkaiah Naidu said the legislation providing 33% reservation for women in Parliament and state legislatures would see the light of day after the NDA secures majority in the upper house. Naidu also urged political parties to show conviction in this regard.
What is required is political will and administrative skill. That is the requirement of the hour. And once I can assure you, on behalf of my party, if once I get majority in Rajya Sabha, the Women's Reservation Bill will be passed at the earliest.
Tibetan spiritual leader Dalai Lama also pitched for empowerment of women to build stronger nations.
About 200 nations of this planet, the majority of the nations leaders eventually taken by female, or world may become more safer, more peaceful.
Several speakers at the event underscored the need to educate women to achieve internationally agreed goals for development and sustainability. The event also witnessed the participation of international women dignitaries.
So why should women not take responsibility for ensuring right kind of education for boys and girls? That means re-education of their own as mothers. Their mother at home and their teacher outside the home. So I think the onus is a lot on the woman, how she grooms the boys, how she grooms the girls.
Women empowerment is an essential precondition of inclusive, equitable, participatory and sustainable democracy and development. A robust democracy must create opportunity for inclusion of women in every sector.
The conclave will come out with the Amravati Declaration on Women Empowerment at the end of the three-day deliberations.
There will be declaration after this. The declaration will be circulated to all policymakers, either Government of India or state governments or some other private organizations, everybody. Then naturally there will be some takers.
There would be 7 plenary sessions at the event with discussions on subjects like socio-political challenges in women empowerment, women's status and decision-making, building own identity and vision for the future.
India is ranked 87th out of 144 countries in global gender gap. In world's largest democracy, women hold only 12% seats in the upper and lower houses of parliament. And National Women's Parliament is an attempt to provide platform for deliberations and encourage social, economic and political empowerment of women. Reporting from Amravati with camera persons Prashanta and Sudhanshu, I'm Kriti Mishra for Rajya Sabha Television.
And now let's get you all the latest from the ongoing assembly elections in Verdict 2017. The election bugle will be sounded off in the country's largest state as Uttar Pradesh begins voting in 7 phases from tomorrow. 73 constituencies spread over 15 districts will be voting to elect leaders from 4 main contenders: the Samajwadi Party, Congress Alliance, BJP, BSP and the Rashtriya Lok Dal. The first phase is expected to see a nail-biting finish, with all parties trying to woo Muslim votes in the districts including Rayat-Skat, Muzaffarnagar and Shamli. BJP has yet again fielded Muzaffarnagar riot-accused MLA Sangeet Singh Som and Suresh Rana on the Sagdana and Thana Bhawan seats. In fact, phase 1 will also decide the fate of around 25 VIP seats in the region. These include Noida, where Pankaj Singh, son of Union Home Minister Rajnath Singh, and Atrauli, where Sandeep Singh, grandson of former UP Chief Minister Kalyan Singh, would be vying for their maiden entry in the UP Assembly elections. In fact, another high-profile contest will be the Mathura seat, where 3-time incumbent Congress MLA Pradeep Mathur has been challenged by BJP national spokesperson Shrikant Sharma. In the 2012 Assembly elections, the SP and the BSP had bagged 24 seats each, and BJP had 11 out of the 73. The region is also a stronghold of the Rashtriya Lok Dal, which has bagged 9 seats, and the Congress only 5.
हमने अपने इलेक्शन ऑफिशियल्स को ये निर्देश भी दे दिए हैं कि वो हमारे आचार संहिता का अनुपालन और उसका कार्यान्वयन बिना किसी भेदभाव के, बिना किसी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी में डिस्क्रिमिनेट किए हुए उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन सुनिश्चित करें। क्योंकि कैराना फेज 1 में स्थित है, हमने वहां के इलेक्शन से संबंधित जिला मजिस्ट्रेट, पुलिस अधीक्षक और उनके आला अधिकारियों को ये आगरा की मीटिंग में निर्देश दिए हैं कि वो इस बात का प्रचार प्रसार करें, इस बात को उनके क्षेत्रों में जहां से वो विस्थापित हुए हैं या जहां चले गए हैं उनके यहाँ इसका प्रचार प्रसार करें कि वो यदि वापस आना चाहते हैं और अपना वोट डालना चाहते हैं, उनको पूर्ण सुरक्षा प्रदान की जाए।
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today promised small farmers in UP that the BJP will waive off their loans if it is voted to power. Addressing an election rally in Uttar Pradesh's Bijnor area, Modi criticized Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav for the deteriorating law and order situation in the state.
ये 6 मिले हैं जिनका किसानों को.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday addressed a campaign rally in Bijnor, targeting the ruling Samajwadi Party's poll alliance with the Congress in Uttar Pradesh. The Prime Minister urged people to reject the two clans. He slammed the Akhilesh government, saying that people of Uttar Pradesh did not deserve an inefficient state government that failed to work for their well-being.
क्या उत्तर प्रदेश की सरकार का स्वयं का जो कानून व्यवस्था का रिपोर्ट है वो उस बात की गवाही नहीं है कि यहां आए दिन बहन बेटियों पर बलात्कार होते हैं? इतना ही नहीं भाइयों बहनों, समाजवादी पार्टी ये पार्टी नहीं है, कुनबा है, कुनबा, एक परिवार का कुनबा. और ये दो पार्टियों का गठबंधन नहीं है, एक गठबंधन दो कुनबों का है, एक दिल्ली वाला कुनबा और एक सफाई वाला कुनबा.
Promising a loan waiver to small-scale farmers, Modi said he will help debt-hit sugarcane farmers if the BJP came to power in the state.
जो छोटे-छोटे किसान हैं, भाजपा की सरकार बनते ही इन छोटे किसानों का कर्ज माफ कर दिया जाएगा. मैं भी उत्तर प्रदेश का सांसद हूं. सांसद के नाते मैं उत्तर प्रदेश की जनता को कहता हूं, जो उत्तर प्रदेश में नई सरकार बनेगी भाजपा की, सबसे पहला काम ये किसानों का मैं करवा के रहूंगा, वो मैं आपको वादा करता हूं.
Uttar Pradesh goes to poll in 7 phases between February 11th and March 8th. The election is expected to be a three-cornered contest between the SP Congress combined, the BJP and the BSP. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And campaigning for the second phase of the Uttar Pradesh elections, Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav addressed a rally in Pilibhit today, recalling the past relationship between the BSP and the BJP. Akhilesh claimed that Mayawati could align with the Saffron Party yet again. Targeting the BJP, Akhilesh said that the demonetization drive implemented by the government caused hardships to everyone and people were forced to stand in long queues for hours. The Samajwadi Party leader also addressed an election rally in Firozabad.
एक भी सीट नहीं मिली और हमें जानकारी कराई कि आखिरकार बहुजन समाज पार्टी की सीटें 0 कैसे रह गई. और यकीन मानना, जब सच्चाई सामने आई तो बहुजन समाज पार्टी ने अपना पूरा वोट और कई जगह वोट भारतीय जनता पार्टी को ट्रांसफर करा दिया. ये सावधान रहना, ये चुनाव हो सकता है कुछ भी कहने, लेकिन इनके रिश्ते पुराने भारतीय जनता पार्टी से 3 बार मिलकर की सरकार बनाई थी.
And BSP Supremo Mayawati today asserted that her party will ensure complete law and order in the state if voted back to power. Speaking at the rally in Majhola area of Moradabad, she promised to restart all welfare schemes that were stopped by the Samajwadi Party government. Dismissing the SP Congress alliance, the BSP chief said that the Congress had formed an alliance with the anti-majority Samajwadi Party.
कि उत्तर प्रदेश में बीजेपी ने अपने पूर्व में रहे लगभग 6 वर्षों के शासनकाल में यहाँ विकास व जनहित व जन कल्याण के कार्यों की तरफ ध्यान न देकर केवल अपने आरएसएस के एजेंडे के मुताबिक ही चलकर यहाँ अधिकांश सांप्रदायिक ताकतों को ही मजबूत किया है.
आने वाले 1 महीने के अंदर
Well, BJP President Amit Shah also addressed a rally in Uttar Pradesh's Etawah district and attacking the ruling Samajwadi Party. He said that the results will prove that the people of UP have accepted the BJP. He also urged people to give BJP a chance in the state.
सपा ये जो क्रम चला है ना, उसने पूरे उत्तर प्रदेश को विकास की दौड़ में पीछे छोड़ दिया है. उत्तर प्रदेश की जनता ने सपा को भी मौके दिए, बसपा को भी दिए, चाचा को भी दिए, भतीजे को भी दिए.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressed an election rally in Haridwar ahead of the Uttarakhand Assembly election scheduled to take place on the 15th of February. Modi sought the complete restoration of Devbhoomi and said that only BJP can make this possible if it comes to power in the state. The Prime Minister also criticized the Harish Rawat government, saying that this land does not deserve a corrupt government. He also spoke about surgical strikes and slammed the opposition for politicizing the issue.
उत्तराखंड में भाजपा की सरकार बनेगी। ये लूट चलाने वाले, ये जंगलों को बेचने वाले, मैं आपको विश्वास देता हूं, भाजपा की उत्तराखंड की नई सरकार एक एक का हिसाब पूरा करेगी। कानून का काम करके रहेगा। कोई भी कितना बड़ा क्यों न होगा, उसको कानून के दायरे को स्वीकार करना पड़ेगा। ये हमारी सरकार करके रहेगी।
All right, some international news now. In a setback to Donald Trump's efforts to ban on visitors from 7 mainly Muslim countries, U.S. Appeals Court has refused to reinstate the travel ban order. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeal said that it would not block a lower court ruling that halted the order. It said that the government had not proven any terror threat that could justify the ban. It also rejected the argument that the president had sole discretion to set immigration policy. On the other hand, the 2 U.S. states that had challenged the travel ban said that the ban was unconstitutional and discriminated against Muslims. They convinced the judges that the order would create further chaos. Meanwhile, Donald Trump responded to the ruling with an angry tweet saying that national security was at risk and there would be a legal challenge. He then gave an audio statement saying that it was a political decision. The Justice Department, which made representations to the appeals court on behalf of the White House, has said that it was reviewing the decision and considering its options. The case is now likely to end up at the U.S. Supreme Court.
It's a political decision, and we're going to see them in court, and I look forward to doing it.
So you believe the judges made it?
We have a situation where the security of our country is at stake, and it's a very, very serious situation. So we look forward, as I just said, to seeing them in court.
But in a brief breather for the U.S. government in what is being viewed as a cordial phone call between the U.S. and China, U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to honor and continue with the One China policy during his conversation with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. The One China policy is the diplomatic acknowledgement that there is only one Chinese government. Trump had angered Beijing in December by talking to the President of Taiwan and saying that the U.S. did not have to stick to the One China policy. The telephone conversation was the first between the two leaders since Trump took office on the 20th of January. China's foreign ministry reacted positively to the conversation and appreciated Trump's backing of the policy.
一个中国原则是中美关系的政治基础。那么，奉行一个中国政策，遵守中美3个联合公报的原则，这是美国政府应尽的义务，也是中方的一贯立场。特朗普总统在通话中表示。
And finally, in cricket, Virat Kohli on Friday created history by becoming the first batsman to score double centuries in 4 successive Test series, surpassing the legendary Sir Donald Batman and Rahul Dravid. The Indian captain hit 204 runs in the first innings on day 2 of the Hyderabad Test against Bangladesh, as the host declared on a mammoth total of 687 for the loss of 6 wickets. During his innings, Kohli also registered the most Test runs in a home season, breaking Virendra Sehwag's previous record of 1,105 in 17 innings. Wicket-keeper Ridhiman Saha also scored a ton, becoming the 3rd centurion of the innings after Murli Vijay and Kohli. In reply, Bangladesh were 41 for 1 at stumps as India struck early with a new ball by removing opener Soumya Sarkar.
Inside the circle. And Virat Kohli picks up another.
And that's what we have for you in the news at 6. Thanks for joining us.